Hey guys, it's Dion. Welcome back to the channel. Have you ever asked yourself, why is my computer so slow when I'm in Lightroom and Photoshop? Hopefully I have the answer for you today. I really should. So if you stick around, we'll get to that. Welcome back, everybody. So I went through the exact same thing you did years ago, and even as so much as to recently take apart a computer so you can see why you're having problems. If you'll just follow me over to my old desktop PC, I will show you each and every component on the inside to show you what each thing does and show you why it does what it does. And these are the reasons why each component is holding you up for Lightroom and Photoshop. To kind of give you an overall analysis or a bigger picture, think of it as you're learning or as you are learning photography. You have your exposure triangle, right? That triune triangle would give you the proper exposure, but you would have to have your shutter speed, your aperture, and your ISO would all have to be in perfect sync with each other for you to get this beautiful picture. Now, in photography, your camera and your lenses are your tools. They really are. And to have really good tools and to go out into the field and to work hard and to get a really good image and then come back and have nothing but issues, it can be frustrating and time consuming. But time is very precious. These are moments that you could be losing from friends and family and that you could also be making more money with. With that said, let's go over to the desktop and we'll look at the components so they make a little bit more sense. As you can see, I have my old desktop. This is an HP Envy that you can get on Amazon or eBay. They go from anywhere from $500 to $2,000. This particular one cost me $1,200. I did get ripped off because it didn't have a graphics card, and we'll go over that in 1 second. So this right here, where the fan is, this is your central processing unit, or also known as your CPU. Under this fan works as a coolant to keep your CPU cool, and I undid the screws. So this is the Intel i7. I believe this is the 11700, okay? Now that is the speed of it. So when you look into getting a computer, especially a desktop, you'll have i3, i5, i7, and i9. They go back years in between each one. For instance, the i9s just came out the last few years. Without saying the exact dates, the i7 came out first in around 2006, with the i5, i3 following it, and then in 2017 the i9 came out, being the top tier model, with the i7 following right behind it. So this right here is the processing unit that is actually the brains of the operation right here. Once this goes in, and they are pretty heavy, it just locks in and it stays cool with this fan. So I'm going to set this over here for right now. But that's your central processing unit, or your CPU. Over here is your power source. This is what's called an HDD, okay? This HDD is for storage. It is a very slow storage. HDDs can go at 35 MPS speeds, but in this day and age, if you look down here, this right here is called an SSD. This particular SSD is called an NVMe SSD. These guys will do speeds of about 5,000. Some of them go at 6,000 and 7,000 megabytes a second. That is insanely fast. So for instance, if I took my SD card out of my camera, plugged it into my computer, and just imported the pictures to the desktop, it could go at speeds of 35 megabytes a second, and 20 gigabytes could take, anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes. Well, when you're going speeds at 5,000 megabytes a second, that's insanely faster than 35. Then over here, these are the old HDDs. These were in the computers back in the day, and these go round and round. And it was thought that the outside edges went faster, and that's why we optimized these, but that's a whole nother story. Now these also come in different forms, and a lot of times you can buy these as external hard drives these days. For instance, over here, this is a Seagate 5 terabyte external hard drive. So if you get a computer that doesn't have a lot of storage, you can put your Lightroom photos on here, or actually use one of these with your laptop and then plug it into your desktop back and forth. And under my computer down here, if you can see, there's an 8 terabyte one that's plugged in, but this one needs a power source. But that's it right here, and that one has 8 terabytes, and that's where I personally keep all my video. All right, so we're good. So coming back to the actual computer here, we have our CPU, we have our storage, okay? Now storage aside, because storage can be bought and sold and set up from an external perspective, we're going to look at the internal components, that triune state that we were talking about. Like with our photography, you have shutter speed, aperture, ISO. With a computer, you're going to have CPU, GPU, and RAM. Now in our case, our CPU was right here, and that was the Intel Core i7. Over here is where the GPU would go, but there's no GPU there, and we'll talk about that in a second. And then we have our RAM sticks. Your RAM sticks is where everything gets sped up. Now these are 3200 RAMs, as you can see. Now RAM itself, for a photographer or videographer, Photoshop recommends 16 gigabytes, but I'm going to be honest, I would recommend 32. If you can put 32 in yours, and all they do is easily, if you can open up your computer, take your RAM stick, stick it in there, and they'll actually pop right in. That one was upside down. So all you have to do is take your RAM stick, stick it in there, and it will snap right into place. And you can see it just locks right in there. There's another secret to RAM, though I'll tell you really fast. RAM comes in different speeds, 2600 megahertz, 3200 megahertz, 3600 megahertz, 4200 megahertz. Now, if you're buying RAM and you don't know this, say for instance that this RAM was 3800 megahertz. Just by clicking it in, I'm not going to get those speeds, or giving it to a computer technician. I will not get those speeds until I go into the BIOS of my computer. And the BIOS is where you tell your computer how to run certain processes. But you open up your BIOS, and in your BIOS you tell this the speed that you want it to run, and then you will get the full speed. If not, you might have 3800 speed RAM and 2600. So just look into that and be aware, okay? Now, for the biggest problem of this particular computer, there is no graphics card. This is where the graphics card would click in. For this particular computer, I was told that it had a 1660 Super in it, and it does not. This is a GeForce RTX 3050 RAM. This is around the same price as the 1660 Super, and they have comparable speeds when it comes to doing processes. I was told if I get this, I can pop it in, where I did put it in and it barely fit. But there are two problems with this particular computer. This computer has the graphics card built into the actual motherboard itself. So inside of this motherboard is my graphics card, which means I can't upgrade it unless I change out the motherboard. So to change out the motherboard, as you've seen from the inside of this PC, is a bigger process than it looks like, because you have to upgrade your power source from the standard 180 watts that comes in there to about 500 to 600 watts. And then you have to actually take apart all your components, put a new motherboard in here, and then reprogram, which can be very time consuming and costly. So to add the extra time and cost to an already $1,200 computer would put this computer at about $2,000 to do, for instance, what this gaming computer can do over here for roughly $1,000. And when I say $1,000, I say that loosely because I bought this off of Facebook Marketplace as well. So let's look at the inside of this desktop. So in this desktop, as we saw, the other one had the chip where I took that fan off. This one has what's called a liquid cooling system. There's supposed to be an LCD display on there, but it's not working. And these lines right here are the liquid that cools your CPU, or your central processing unit. If you look over here, something fell. If you look over here, you can see our RAM sticks right in there. Here's our GPU, or our graphics card right here, where this one's actually a pretty big one. This is made by Asus, and it's the GeForce RTX 3070, which is pretty much an overkill for Photoshop and Lightroom, but it's what came in there. And then the best thing about these gaming computers is, if you look, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fans, plus 2 fans in the graphics card. So technically there's 8 fans on to keep everything cool. Now, heat dissipates energy. Energy is a killer. It will kill Kill, 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 kill. The other thing is, if you look in here, you can see our SSD card from that WD Black. Can you zoom in on that, sweetie? That WD Black back there. Now that is the NVMe card I was telling you guys about. That card will give you the speeds of 5,000 megabytes a second that I was telling you that you need. Now the HDD storage under my computer is very slow. That's why I just use it to hold my video. Now, by putting video on it, it allows me to later on pull it off and then put it into my video editing software, and then from that software I can just edit it because I'm using the proxy, so it's not really that big of a deal. If we go over here to my wife's computer and we look, I'm going to cut hers on. These were actually built by Best Buy. They're called the Cyber PCs, and the great thing about these is they come with all the fans that you need to keep your system cool. They come with about 16, this particular one came with 16 gigs of RAM. It came with the i5 11600, and it came with an Asus GeForce 1060 Super. Now if you look right here, this is the 1060 Super. This is what was supposed to be in my desktop. And you can see there's a fan in it, and it takes a power source. That power source goes to that big battery pack that I showed you on the desktop PC. There's not a lot of differences between desktop PCs and gaming PCs apart from the extra fans of the gaming PCs, the bigger boxes of the gaming PCs. Now these bigger boxes, don't let them intimidate you, because the bigger boxes allows a lot more airflow. That airflow keeps your components cool, and that cooling is really good for your system for longevity and to run processes for longer periods of time. Now if I was just going to sit down and edit pictures for 5 or 10 minutes a day, I could use a business PC if it had the right components in it. Now they sell this exact same configuration in a business desktop for about $1,600 on Amazon. If you go over here to my computer, I'll show you, I'm going to cut on a screen recorder real quick. So as we look at my computer right here, you can see the HP Envy Home and Business Desktop. It has the i7 12712 core, 64 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte, PSI SSD, Intel UHD 770. So you see it has a built-in graphics card, and that will leave you to having the same problems that I have where you can't upgrade your PC. So one of the biggest reasons for having a desktop PC is being able to upgrade it later. If you can't upgrade it later, then why spend $1,200 for something that you can't fine-tune or invest in later on? You're just stuck with what you got forever and ever, and over time things get faster and they get better, and also over time things like Photoshop and Lightroom get bigger and bulkier and heavier and put a bigger load on your computer. So that's why you have so much problems when it comes to using Lightroom and Photoshop. So what I would recommend is, like I said, think about the triumph state that we talked earlier. You need to think CPU, GPU, right? Those two work together in RAM. I would recommend personally 32 gigs of RAM if you're going to run about 2600 or 3200, okay, your RAM speed. Then when it comes to CPU and GPU, for instance, in her specific PC over here, the one I just showed you, she has the i5, but she's running around 11,000 on her speed. So you don't want an i3 or an i5 with a very low number. When I say low number, when we go back to the PC, you can see this is an i7 12700. So as we come over here and look, 12,700 is a beast of a PC. So they trick you and they show you that you have tons of RAM and you have a great Intel i7. But here's the thing, you cannot put a GPU in here. If you can't put a graphics card in there, what'll happen is when I show you in a few minutes, when you run Photoshop and Lightroom, your computer will get stuck. And that might be the reason why you're having trouble. It was the reason why I had trouble. Looking down at a few other computers by HP Envy, we have the i7 10700. That's the one that's in my computer over there. Then we also have, basically, they're saying that's the 2020 model and they run at 960. So when you're looking for things like this, you want to have a terabyte SSD, and this isn't giving you that. You want to have a good generation of the Intel Core, and this one gives you, look, for $1,200 it has the GTX 1660 Super, but you're not getting a big, what is this? I'm sorry. This one might have the 1660 Super, but you're only getting 32 gigs of RAM, but you're getting 512 SSD, 1 terabyte HDD. Now, like I said, with the SSDs, you have to be careful because that might not be the NVMe SSD. And when I say that with a lot of emphasis. Let's go look at one more thing. We're going to pull up SSD cards in Amazon, and I want you to see this. This is very important. We're going to pull up 1 terabyte SSD cards. Do you see this SSD right here? This is the NVMe M.2, okay? This is the SSD I was telling you about. Now this is a Fury. It has speeds of up to 7,300 megabytes a second. That, my friends, is a beautiful thing. If you scroll down a little bit, one down, you see another SSD card. That's called an SSD 3. The SSD 3 only have speeds of 550 megabytes a second. So we're going from 7,000 megabytes a second to 500 megabytes a second. That could be your potential issue right there. So these are things you need to look for in your existing computers and in your future computers. What type of SSD do you have? Do you have an SSD or an HDD? So you have to get familiarized with the lingo, or you'll do like I did and spend $1,200 on something that is not upgradable and is not going to last me into the future. That thing over there, the only thing I can do is rip out the good parts and then put it into like a gaming, and that's the only way that that thing will be future proof. Make sure that you have a graphics card of something of at least a 1060 Super or higher. You need a CPU of an i5, and I would go with 10,000 or higher, i7 10,000 or higher, or i9 10,000 or higher. And you look at your numbers, and you need to try to have at least 32 gigabytes. Try to do those 3 things, and your processes and your speeds will be so much faster. And when I say that, I just want to show you. I went from having Lightroom stick every 5 seconds when I would touch it to now when I go from Lightroom to Topaz to Gigapixel to Luminar, everything just is at the snap of it. See, I'm fucking this whole video up. So now, and the thing will not focus on my damn face. So now when I use software, whether it be Adobe's Lightroom and Photoshop, or I use Luminar Neo, Luminar AI, Topaz Gigapixel Sharpen or Denoise, or even Portrait Pro, which I dabbled with back in the day. If I use any of these softwares, they run super fast. And I can edit video, and it's even faster. So I'm going to give you some quick examples of what is actually running in the background. So over here, if you look on this computer, we have what's called the System Vitals, okay? Now this is some numbers that were set up from Omen Gaming Hub. And I'm actually going to put these on the screen. So let's go over to the monitor here, and I'm going to put these numbers on. I'm going to minimize this up in the corner so we can see what exactly is going on, because right now we are recording. Now on a normal day with just Photoshop running, let's cut on Lightroom, we have Adobe Cloud running in the background. You know, just a normal day of running a few things on a computer. Let's see what everything looks like. So when you look over here, and let me go over to presets. Presets will kill your Lightroom. I don't know if you've ever clicked through your presets, but I have probably 1,000 presets that I've collected over the years. And when I scroll down with my old computer, it would freeze up Lightroom. But with my new computer, let's go ahead and look at the RAM, the CPU, and the GPU. Just going down just through my favorites, look how everything jumps up. And this is just scrolling through presets. Isn't that crazy? So just by going up and down in the presets, this would have literally stuck my other computer and crashed it, and then Lightroom would have had to reboot. But you can see how it got things jumping around in there. Now if we go over here just to edit a picture, and I'm going to take this picture right here. This particular picture has an ISO of 12,800. Now I'm going to give you a quick pro tip. ISO 12,800 was used because in wildlife photography or with birds, you don't control the light, you don't control the background, and you've got a subject that does not want its picture taken. Not like your kids in the studio. Sometimes they don't want their picture taken either, but that ISO would scare a lot of people. You're like, you ruined the picture. Actually, I wouldn't have got the picture if I didn't have my ISO cranked up, or I wouldn't have got him flying fast by me if I didn't have the ISO cranked. And it's one of the unfortunate balance that you have to weigh for which type of photography. But let's take this image and let's go save it. We're going to run this image right now and denoise, Topaz denoise. So let's hit edit and let's click this back on. Watch what happens here. You can see the GPU and the CPU going up. The GPU went up to 74 and just blipped really fast. Now, not having that GPU on my other computer would severely limit me. You also notice that it went boop, 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 and within 4 seconds or possibly less, all 4 pictures got all the ISO taken. Now, with my other computer, it would have taken probably about 4 minutes for the same process to happen. So 4 seconds versus 4 minutes. And the only real difference between that computer and this gaming computer was what? The graphics card. There's a lot of times where I like to take my images and kind of make a fine art out of them and get really creative. And you can't go through those processes without having a tool that works and has your back. So that's all I wanted to say today. I just wanted to show you a few of the specs and a few of the things that allow you to get through Lightroom and Photoshop without having that stress of, hey, this isn't working, I'm ready to throw my hands in there. Because all you need is a graphics card. And you can run out and get a 1660 Super if you have an existing desktop with a decent CPU and a decent amount of. A lot of people don't know how important each component is, but each one helps the other one when it comes to doing stuff. So whether you're doing photos, videos, never let Lightroom and Photoshop get the best of you ever again. I hope to see you guys in the next video, and if anything helped you in this video, please take 1 or 2 seconds and just slide to the slide. And if anything helped you in this video, take 1 or 2 seconds and just slide on over and hit that like button. I really appreciate it. I love each and every one of you guys, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you.